So for topic 4, we're technically going to be starting our chat on dividing fractions, but we have this one quick little example that we have to do before we really get into the dividing of fractions. So topic 4 is dividing fractions, but first we have to talk about something called a reciprocal, okay? So it says here the definition is two numbers are said to be reciprocals of each other if their product is 1. To find the reciprocal of a number, write the number in fraction form and then invert the fraction. That just means once you have a number written in fraction form, reverse the numerator and denominator. Okay, so again, the formal definition, or sort of formal, two numbers are reciprocals if their product is 1. It's easy to find a reciprocal. So in example 4, it just says find the reciprocal of each number. This is a pivotal part of dividing, so that's why we're going to start with this, and then in the next example, really dive into the steps for division. So the directions here say to find the reciprocal of a number, write the number in fraction form if it's not already in fraction form, and then just reverse or invert your fraction. So if I want the reciprocal of 2/3, it would just be 3/2. So I would just literally reverse the direction. I would flip my fraction upside down. I would change the numerator to the denominator and vice versa. But let's look at what that means. If I take my original fraction, 2/3, and I multiply it by its reciprocal, 3/2, notice if I just multiply straight across, the numerators become 2 times 3, which is 6, over 3 times 2, which is also 6. And we already know the division properties of 1 state that if you take a number and divide it by exactly itself, you get 1. So that's what this is saying right here. Two numbers are reciprocals if their product is 1. That's what we mean by that. Okay. Now for us, we just need to find the reciprocal, and that's really quite easy. So for part B, we have the fraction -1/4. Okay. It's already in fraction form. We want to flip it upside down. So we would get -4/1 or just -4. Okay. If a fraction, if your initial number is negative, the reciprocal would also be negative. Okay. And then finally, we have part C. The directions tell us to find the reciprocal of a number, write it in fraction form. Well, 7 is not in fraction form yet. So all I would have to do to write it as a fraction is put it over 1. So I could go 7/1 and then flip my fraction upside down, and I would get 1/7. So there's your reciprocal. Okay? So now let's go ahead. Knowing this, let's start talking about dividing fractions. Okay, so steps to divide fractions. You first, believe it or not, have to convert your division to multiplication. We don't technically know how to divide fractions, but we do know how to multiply fractions. So we're going to use that to our advantage. So if we want to take a division problem and convert it to multiplication, it's not that big a deal. Here's how you do it. You keep the first fraction exactly the same. Okay, then you switch your division to multiplication, but we can't just change an operation. That's ridiculous. We can't just be like magically, hey, let's instead of dividing, multiply. If you're going to take division and convert it to multiplication, to correct that change, you take the reciprocal of the second fraction. So for example, if I have A over B divided by C over D, the way I convert this to multiplication is my first fraction stays the same, division becomes multiplication, and then I invert my second fraction. I take the reciprocal of the second fraction, so it becomes D over C. So that is how you convert division to multiplication. And then from here, we just follow the steps to multiply. So we multiply across and then simplify. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at example 5. So find each quotient. Answers need to be written in lowest terms. Okay, hold on. I just hit something. There we go. Okay, so first we have 1/2 divided by 1/4. Okay, so right off the bat, first thing I want to do is convert this to multiplication. So my first fraction stays exactly the same. I convert division to multiplication, and then I flip my second fraction over. Okay, so I have 1/2 times 4/1. Now I'm going to continue for this video to follow those same steps for multiplication where I show us writing these out as factorizations. And then once we get really, really comfortable with this, again, we can take some shortcuts. But for now, let's do it the long way. So I can think of my 1 as just 1. That's not going to change. But my 4, instead of thinking as 4 is 4, I'm going to think of it as 2 times 2. Now in the denominator, 2 is just 2. It's prime. 1 is just 1, so I'm going to leave those as is. And now I need to see if I have any common factors top to bottom that could be divided out. And we certainly do. We have 2's. So I have 2's that could be divided out of the numerator and denominator. I think that's fairly easy to see. So go ahead and divide. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And now let's see what we have left. So for the numerator, I have 1 times 2. For the denominator, I have 1 times 1, which is just 1. And when we're writing fractions, like if we're just multiplying or dividing fractions, we want them to be in their simplest form. So this we could actually simplify. 2 divided by 1 by the division properties of 1 we know is just 2. So there you have it. So you have now learned how to divide fractions. Let's look at another example. So for part B, we have negative 3/25 divided by 27/40. Okay, we have a negative divided by a positive. We know this is going to be negative. So kind of figure out your sign right off the bat, do your side work, and then come back and just double check your sign. Make sure you double check at the end always. So for now, we know this is going to be negative. We'll address that again in a bit. So for now, I'm going to think about just rewriting this as multiplication. So I have 3/25 times 40 over 27. First fraction stays the same. Convert division to multiplication and then flip the second fraction. Okay. Now that tells me that for my numerator, I'm going to have 3 times 40. For my denominator, I'm going to have 25 times 27. And now let's see if we can find some of those common factors. I know that if numbers end in 0 and 5, they're always divisible by at least 5. So I'm going to leave my 3 alone, but then my 40, I'm going to go ahead and divide 40 by 5. That tells me I get 8. So I'm going to write 40 as 5 times 8. And then in my denominator, 25, I already know it ends in a 5, so it's divisible by 5. So I'm going to take 25 and divide it by 5. I get 5. So that tells me 5 times 5 is 25. Now, 27 happens to be divisible by 3. Okay, so I'm going to write 27 as 3 times, well, 27 divided by 3 is 9. Now we want to see if we have common factors top to bottom, and we have 2. I have a 3 right off the bat that I see. That tells me the numerators and denominators had a common factor of 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and again, 1. And then we have another common factor of 5. So that tells me the numerators and denominators both had a common factor of 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1, 1 again. And now we can clean things up. So in the numerator, I have 1 times 8. In the denominator, I have 1 times 5 times 1 times 9. So really just 5 times 9, which is 45. And just double check and make sure you don't have any other common factors. I know 8 is really just 2's and 4's. I know 5 is prime, so it's just 5. 9 could be written as 3's. So there are no common factors between 2's, 4's, 3's, and 5's. So this is as good as it's going to get, but double check your signs. Remember, we had a negative divided by a positive, which is always negative. So our final answer is negative 8/45. Okay, let's do 2 more. So for part C, we have negative 5/6 divided by negative 10. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just think about my signs for just a second. If I take a negative and I divide it by a negative, it's going to equal a positive. So I know my final answer is going to be positive something. Okay, so let's see what we get. Let's first convert this to multiplication. So before I even do that, let's do one step first. I know I have negative 5/6 divided by negative 10. But because we're dealing with division and we're going to have to do a reciprocal, let's think of negative 10 as negative 10 over 1. Okay, so that's really negative 5/6 times, we convert division to multiplication, and we're going to multiply by negative 1/10. Okay, now we already know that this is going to be positive, so if you want to just not even worry about your signs and your side work like we did in the other 2 examples, see, like up here, I just acknowledged my sign and then I just kept the signs out of the process. That's fine. Okay, so let's see what we get here. So if you want to just ignore your signs for now, we have a 5 times 1 in the numerator. In the denominator, I have 6 times 10. Now, I know that 10 is going to be divisible by 5. Hopefully, we can see that easily. So I'm going to leave my numerator alone. And then for my denominator, I'm going to end up just leaving the 6 alone. But the 10, I want to think of it as 5 times 2. And now we see that we have a common factor of 5 in the numerator and the denominator. So that means we could have divided both of those by 5 right off the bat. So 5 divided by 5 is 1, 1 again. And now we can clean things up. So the numerator is really just 1 times 1. The denominator is 6 times 1 times 2, which is 12. And remember, we were dividing two negative numbers, which tells me my product, or my quotient in this case, is really going to be positive. So my final answer is positive 1/12. And that's it. Okay. Not the hardest thing you're ever going to do. Okay. Let's do one more. Part D, we have -7 divided by 14 thirds. So we have a negative divided by a positive. That's going to be negative. And then just like before, because I have a whole number here, I'm going to go ahead and write my whole number as a fraction just to kind of make it easier so I have numerators and denominators throughout. So this is really -7 over 1 divided by 14 over 3. And, well, divided by, good grief, I just got a little ahead of myself, didn't I? So now I need to convert this to multiplication, okay? And if you want to ignore your signs throughout the process, that's fine. Just make sure you always double check them at the end. But we have -7 over 1 times 3 over 14. Okay, now hopefully you're getting to where you can kind of start seeing these factors in the numerators and denominators. I can see that I've got a 7 and a 14, and they have a 7 in common. So if we want to rewrite this, we're going to get -7 times 3 in the numerator. The denominator is going to be 1 times 14, but I'm going to go ahead and just write my 14 as 2 times 7. And now you can see that we have a common factor of 7. So 7 divided by 7 is 1, top and bottom. And if I multiply across, you've got that -1 times 3. And then in the denominator, I have 1 times 2 times 1, which is 2. So we end up getting -3 halves. Make sure you're always watching your signs, whether you keep those negatives from start to finish throughout the side work process, or you just kind of figure out your sign and then don't use the signs in your process and then go back and double check your sign. That is fine. Just make sure at the end you double check your signs and don't forget anything. So there you have it. That's division of fractions. Not too bad. Okay. So remember the reciprocal stuff, and then remember the multiplication stuff, and division's not that bad. Now we're going to go ahead and look at example 6 here, and this wraps up this video. So this is kind of more of an application. We've talked about this before in a few other videos. We've looked at this introduction idea to algebra. So we know what an algebraic expression is. So what we're going to do here for example 6 is we're going to evaluate algebraic expressions that involve multiplication and division of fractions. Now remember, to evaluate an algebraic expression, you replace each variable with the given value, and then you use the order of operations to simplify. So the directions here tell us that. They say replace each variable with a given value, simplify, and write answers in lowest terms. So make sure your final answer is reduced. So for part A, we have x times y. Remember, if you see two numbers or two variables, well, not two numbers, but if you see like a number and a variable or two variables written side by side, we assume they're being multiplied. So seeing x and y right beside each other, we assume multiplication here. So we have x times y, and we're going to evaluate for when x is 3/4 and y is -8/9. So let's go ahead and write that out. So I've got 3/4 times -8/9. Now I see that I've got a positive times a negative, so I know this is going to have a negative product. And then I'm just going to skip the negative in the side work. Just make sure you always check your signs if you do this, okay? So I've got 3/4 times 8/9. So that's going to be 3 times 8 in the numerator, 4 times 9 in the denominator, and hopefully you're getting good at kind of seeing these common factors. I know that 3 and 9 have a common factor of 3. I know that 8 and 4 have a common factor of 4. So let's go ahead and break down the 8 and the 9, okay? So in my numerator, I have 3 times 8, which I'm going to write as 2 times 4. In the denominator, I have 4 times 9, and I'm going to write the 9 as 3 times 3. And now we can pretty easily see those common factors. I can see I have a 3 in the numerator and denominator, so that tells me both the numerator and denominator were divisible by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, top and bottom. And then we also have a common factor of 4. So that tells me the numerator and denominator were both divisible by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 4 divided by 4 in the denominator, also 1. Now we can clean things up and then just remember to check our sign. So in the numerator, I get 1 times 2 times 1, which is just 2. In the denominator, I get 1 times 3, which is just 3. But remember, we were multiplying x times y. X was positive, y was negative. This is negative 2/3. Okay, always check your sign. So if you don't keep the sign in your side work, make sure you check at the end. Okay, last up, we have part B, which is just x divided by y. So that tells me I'm going to take x, which is negative 5/9, and I'm going to divide it by y, which is negative 6/15. So first things first, I can see that I'm dividing two negatives. That tells me my quotient is absolutely going to be positive. Okay. And I want to go ahead and convert this to multiplication. So first fraction stays the same. Division becomes multiplication. And then I flip the second fraction. So I get negative 15/6. Okay. Now, at this point, I know I've got a negative times a negative. It's still going to be positive. So if you want to skip the signs for now, that's fine. Just always double check at the end. So I'm going to end up with 5 times 15 in the numerator and 9 times 6 in the denominator. And I know that 15 has a factor of 3 and 9 and 6 both have a factor of 3. So we've got a 3 that we can for sure divide out. So let's rewrite. So for my numerator, I've got 5 times 15, which I'm going to write as 3 times 5. For my denominator, I've got 9 times 6, and I'm going to rewrite the 9 as 3 times 3, and then I'll just leave the 6 as is. So you can see really clearly here, we definitely have a factor of 3. Okay, so 3 divided by 3 is 1, top and bottom. And then in the numerator, I just have 5 times 1 times 5, which is 25. In the denominator, I have 1 times 3 times 6, which is 18. And I know I don't have any other common factors because 5 is prime, 3 is prime, 6 is not prime, but it doesn't have factors of 5, so there's no other factor top to bottom that could be divided out. So we're just stuck with the 25/18. And now double check your signs. So we had x divided by y. X and y were both negative, and when you divide two negatives, it becomes positive. So we have positive 25/18. And that's it. So that's multiplying and dividing fractions. Generally, it's not the hardest thing to do. Definitely takes practice. The more you practice your multiplication tables, the easier this kind of stuff is going to be. So continue to work on that if your multiplication tables are fuzzy for you. Not the hardest part of fractions. Make sure you understand what to do for multiplication and division. We're going to shift gears quite a bit when we start talking about addition and subtraction. Okay, so make sure you get some good practice with this first.